So today, we're diving into a collection of ancient stories that were designed to teach some really profound lessons, but they do it through some of the most dramatic and honestly, kind of shocking examples you can imagine. We're looking at the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, and it's going to challenge us to ask a big question. What is wisdom really worth?
Now, this isn't some dry book of rules or dense philosophy. It's a collection of what are called Jataka tales. You can think of them as spiritual fables, really. Stories about the Buddha's many past lives on his long journey to enlightenment. And each one is a powerful narrative meant to make you feel the real weight and the real consequence of every single choice you make.
So I really want you to think about this, because this is the question at the heart of the entire text. How far would you actually go for something you believe in? What's the absolute ultimate price you'd be willing to pay for just a single piece of truth? Just hold that thought for a minute.
And that question brings us to our first major theme, the almost unbelievable value that these stories place on getting wisdom. I mean, we're talking about a value that goes way beyond anything we normally hold dear.
The hero in all these tales is the bodhisattva, which is really just a way of saying a being who is dedicated to becoming enlightened for the sake of everyone else. And we follow this person through lifetime after lifetime, always driven by this burning hunger for truth. And you have to understand, in this worldview, your physical body is just a temporary vehicle. But wisdom, well, wisdom is forever.
And this is where things get, well, incredibly intense. The stories show the value of wisdom in a way that's almost hard to wrap your head around. I mean, look at the pattern here. One king has 1,000 oil lamps lit on his body. Another has 1,000 iron nails hammered into him. And a third makes the unthinkable sacrifice of feeding his own family to a demon. And what's the reward for these extreme, agonizing acts? It's not a kingdom. It's not eternal life. For each one, it's just a single verse of Dharma, one line of cosmic truth. That's what truth costs in these stories.
So what kind of wisdom could possibly be worth that price? Well, here's an example of one of those verses. It's a really stark, powerful summary of the Buddhist idea of impermanence, the idea that nothing, absolutely nothing lasts. And what these stories are arguing is that to truly get this, to really feel this simple but profound truth in your bones, that's worth any sacrifice you can possibly imagine. Okay, so this idea of sacrifice keeps building until we get to what is probably the most famous story in the entire collection. It's a tale that mixes that extreme sacrifice with a kind of radical compassion.
So here's the setup. The prince, in a past life, stumbles upon a starving tigress who is just about to eat her own cubs because she's so desperate. He looks at his own body, which he knows is temporary and will decay anyway, and he sees a solution. And the logic here is what's so incredible. His sacrifice doesn't just save the cubs' lives, it also saves the mother from the awful act of killing her own children. It's an act of compassion so radical that it ends suffering on multiple levels at once.
You see, the prince's action was all about preventing the suffering that would come from the tigress's action. And this idea that every single action creates a ripple effect is absolutely central to the sutra. It brings us to the universal law that governs every single story in this text, karma.
To put it simply, karma is just a principle that your intentional actions have consequences. That's it. Good intentions, good deeds, they lead to good things down the road. But harmful actions, the ones that come from anger or greed or just not knowing any better, they inevitably lead to suffering. In these stories, it's a natural law, just like gravity.
And the Sutra doesn't just talk about this idea, it shows you with these really concrete stories. You see how a small act of disrespect, a girl insulting a sage just for how he looks, directly causes her to be reborn with a horribly ugly body, even though she's a princess. And on the flip side, a poor man offers just 2 coins, but he does it with pure joy. And he's reborn as a boy who literally has an endless supply of gold coins in his hands. The message couldn't be clearer. The universe is keeping score. That link between cause and effect is direct, and it is often very dramatic.
But here's the thing. It's not all about these huge gestures or dramatic sacrifices. The stories also reveal that there's something else that's even more important, something that is accessible to every single one of us right now. And that is the power of our sincere intention. And this is such a key insight. The stories hammer this point home again and again. The universe doesn't care how much your gift is worth. It's measuring the purity and the sincerity of your heart. A tiny little act that's driven by a huge heart can create massive ripples, as we're about to see. And there's no better story to illustrate this than this one. So you have a little boy, he's just playing in the dirt. He sees the Buddha walking by,
and his heart just fills with this incredible sense of joy and respect. But he has nothing to give, no money, no flowers, so he does the only thing he can think of. He scoops up a handful of dirt, and with a completely pure and happy heart, he offers it up as if it were the most precious gold on earth. And because of that one simple, sincere act, we get this number, 84,000. What on earth could that possibly be?
Believe it or not, that single handful of dirt offered with such pure intention generated so much good karma that the boy was reborn as the legendary King Ashoka. And what did King Ashoka do? He became one of the greatest champions in Buddhist history. He's credited with building 84,000 stupas. These are monuments to spread the teachings all across the land. Think about that, from a handful of dirt to an entire empire dedicated to the Dharma. That right there is the power of intention.
So after all these intense stories of sacrifice and karma and intention, what's the big takeaway? What are these tales of the wise and the foolish really trying to tell us?
Well, it really boils down to a few powerful ideas. First, these wild, shocking stories, they're just vehicles. They're meant to be unforgettable lessons about core principles. They teach that real compassion isn't just a feeling, it's actively trying to end the suffering of others. They show us that karma is just a fact of life, where every single action matters. And maybe the biggest lesson of all, they reveal that the purity of your intention is the real superpower, capable of turning something as small as a handful of dirt into a force for good that can change the world.
Which brings us right back to that first question we asked, but maybe with a bit more depth. This sutra pushes us to think not just about what we believe, but how we act on those beliefs. And it leaves us with a really challenging thought. In a world that is so full of suffering, what does true compassion really ask of us today?